Okay, this problem is about inventory errors, and it's about the moron company who clearly can't count. So, let's go through and look at the errors that they tell us about, and the easiest thing to do is to lay it out as they give it to us, and then go through and do the errors step by step. So, they tell us in 2016, the ending inventory was understated by $56,000. Right? Is that what they tell us? Understated by $56,000. So, in 2016, they understated by $56,000. So at the end of 2016, the corrected number, because remember, inventory and income travels in the same direction. So if inventory was understated, income had to be understated. So we need to reduce the income by the same amount. So the cost of goods sold has to go down, because if the inventory was understated, the cost of goods sold was overstated. So the corrected cost of goods sold is $559,000. And let's stay with 2016. So we're dealing with the same 56 grand. Now, the net income was understated because inventory and income travel in the same direction. So we have to add that $56,000 to income, because again, remember, income and inventory travel in the same direction. Now, current assets, if the inventory was understated, the current assets were understated, so we need to add that back as well. So that's $1,311,000. Now, equity, that's kind of the slop bucket at the end of the line where everything ends up. So, we understated our inventory, which means we understated our income, which means we understated our equity. So we need to add $56,000 to that. So our ending inventory equity, is $1,443,000. Now, I don't want you to get the idea that you always have to add or subtract. You have to think what's happening. Now, some of these things carry over to the second year. Our cost of goods sold in 2016 was overstated, so we had to reduce that, which means this is understated because this $56,000 doesn't belong here. It belongs here. So we need to add that there. Now, because we're morons, we also made a $20,000 error in 2017. They tell us that the inventory on 2017 is overstated by $20,000. So it's the exact opposite of this. So the inventory was overstated, so the cost of goods sold was understated, so we have to add that. So we have to add that $20,000. So our corrected cost of goods sold is 57 plus the error from last year plus the error for this year, 1,033. Now, on these, what I need you to do is just think through. Remember, inventory and income travel in the same direction. If inventory is overstated, cost of goods is understated. Remember our inventory dollar from the last video? And one side was cost of goods sold, and the other side was ending inventory. If you move this line one way or the other, you have to change both pieces. You can't change just one half. Okay, there's no hole in the middle for it to fall through. Now, keeping in mind that our net income for this year was overstated, that means we have to reduce it this year for last year's screw up, and we get to reduce it again for this year's error. So instead of 285, we end up with 209. Now, our current assets were overstated. Tells us our current assets, our inventory was overstated. So we have to reduce that this year because we don't have all that inventory. We have 20,000 less than we said. So this makes our current assets 1345. And just like I said before, equity is the slop bucket. That's where it all goes. We have to reduce the equity by the 20,000 in fictional inventory. This inventory doesn't exist. We made it up. The stock boy was out smoking dope before he counted the inventory. It doesn't exist. We have to reduce our ending equity by that $20,000 of made up inventory. Now, let's take a look at 2018. They didn't give us any recording for 2018's errors, so just because I'm an optimist, I'm going to assume that they're correct. I don't know why I would do that, but I will. 56,000 we've taken care of. We took care of it in 16 and 17. We don't need to do that, anything with that in 18. Now, we overstated the inventory in 17, which means the cost of goods sold for 18 is wrong because the beginning inventory was $20,000 less. Remember, cost of goods sold, beginning inventory plus purchases minus ending inventory. We overstated it here, so we have to remove it here. So our cost of goods sold for 18, barring any new errors, $760,000. Now let's take a look at 2018 for income. We reported 241, but income and inventory travel in the same direction. We have to remove that extra $20,000. We took it out up here, so we have to put it back in for 18 because we had 20,000 more. We understated it here. So these numbers have to cancel. So we had to subtract it here. So if our cost of goods sold went down, cost of goods sold goes down, the ending inventory has to go up. So we have to add that. So our net income is 261. And the way to do these is step by step, little by little. You try to do this all at one shot, you're really going to get messed up. Try to do it little by little, okay? Now, the current assets, we took care of that here, okay? Are the current assets affected in 2018 by 2017's error? No, we're assuming that they could count, so we don't have to make any adjustment to current assets, because that would only be if they made a new error this year, which we're believing they didn't do. And since they made no new error this year, and since these obviously cancel, cost of goods sold and ending inventory are two halves of the same quarter, there's no change necessary here. So it's not as confusing as it looks at first. You just have to go through it step by step by step. Okay. Now, part 2 says, let me read it to you exactly. It says, what is the error in total net income for the combined 3-year period resulting from the inventory errors? Well, the total net income for the 3-year period is not affected by the errors because the errors are self-correcting. If you overstate inventory in 1 year, unless the inventory shows up like manna from heaven, it's going to be understated the following year. You're not going to have what you said you had. So they wash out. Okay. Then the next thing it asks us is why the understatement of inventory results in an understatement of equity. Very simple. Inventory and income travel in the same direction. Inventory is part of cost of goods sold. If your inventory is understated, your cost of goods sold is overstated, so your income is affected. Income and inventory travel in the same direction. Always. Just think about that for a minute or two, then play with this problem. Income and inventory travel in the same direction.